They called me a gold digger, a user, a calculating opportunist. Whispers followed me like a phantom limb, always there, always stinging. They saw the age gap, the perceived difference in our stations, and drew their easy, cruel conclusions. But they never saw the secrets we shared, the desperate gamble, or the chilling danger I was running from. They never understood that marrying a man twice my age wasn't about his money. It was the bravest, most terrifying, and ultimately, the most life-affirming thing I've ever done to survive. My name is Chloe Davis, and this is my truth, stripped bare of the world's judgment. My life before Elijah was a relentless, exhausting sprint, a desperate scramble for survival. I wasn't just escaping a bad past. I was outrunning a very real, very present threat that sought to extinguish me, to silence me forever. My older brother, Marcus, had been a good man at heart truly. He had a laugh that could fill a room and a loyalty that ran deeper than anyone I knew. But he'd fallen in with the wrong crowd in our hometown of Savannah, Georgia, a ruthless crime syndicate that had its tendrils deep in the city's underbelly, a shadowy network woven into the very fabric of its historic charm. When Marcus, haunted by guilt after witnessing something truly abhorrent, tried to break free, to untangle himself from their violent web, they didn't just come for him. They came for anyone connected to him, a chilling message sent to anyone else considering betrayal. I was collateral damage, an inconvenient witness, a loose end they intended to tie up permanently. The terror of that realization had been a cold knot in my stomach for months before I finally made my move. The night I fled, the memory is still vivid, etched into my mind like a brand. It was a suffocatingly humid Savannah night, the air thick with the scent of magnolias and an underlying current of fear. The aggressive pounding on my apartment door was a drumbeat against my ribs, each that a chilling promise of what lay beyond. I could hear their guttural shouts, their impatient threats. My hands trembled as I scrambled out the back window. A small, worn backpack clutched to my chest, leaving everything behind but the flimsy clothes on my back and a desperate, silent prayer for invisibility. I fled the warmth of the South, trading it for the anonymous chill of the North. I became a ghost, drifting from city to city across the vast American landscape, always looking over my shoulder, always waiting for the inevitable. I worked odd jobs, waitressing in greasy diners in desolate Ohio towns, shelf-stocking in quiet, forgotten libraries in upstate New York, cleaning motel rooms in rundown corners of Pennsylvania. Sleep was a luxury I rarely afforded myself, snatching restless hours in bus stations or cheap hostels. Trust was an impossible gamble, a weakness I couldn't afford. Every stranger was a potential threat, every shared glance a possible recognition. My existence was a perpetual state of hypervigilance, a hollow ache of loneliness that no amount of motion or frantic self-preservation could fill. I survived on stale coffee and the raw adrenaline of constant fear. Then, in a small, independent bookstore nestled in the tranquil, fog-kissed hills of Vermont, a place called the Quiet Tome, I met Elijah Stone. I'd chosen Vermont precisely because it felt so far off the grid, a place where I hoped the whispers of my past wouldn't carry, where the concrete jungle of my fears would give way to something softer, more forgiving. Elijah was a regular, a familiar and comforting presence. He was a retired history professor from a prestigious New England university, always impeccably dressed in tweed, always with a stack of obscure nonfiction titles, and a thoughtful, kind smile that seemed to crinkle the corners of his wise, blue eyes. He never pried, never pushed, never asked the questions I dreaded most. He simply existed, observing the world and me with a gentle curiosity that felt devoid of judgment. He'd offer me a hot coffee on particularly cold mornings, or share some fascinating anecdote about ancient civilizations or forgotten kings, never once asking about my past, only offering a glimpse into his own quiet, learned world. He was a steady, unassuming presence in a life that had only known chaos and flight. For the first time in years, I felt a tiny seed of something akin to peace in his company. I was wary, always. My guard was a wall built brick by brick with suspicion and fear towering high around my heart. But Elijah was different. There was a genuine warmth in his eyes, a profound loneliness that, perhaps, mirrored my own in a strange, unexpected way. He carried a quiet sorrow, a dignity in his solitude that resonated with my own hidden pain. One quiet afternoon, as the bookstore emptied out, the scent of old paper and dust motes dancing in the last rays of sunlight, a casual conversation about the resilience of ancient societies took an unexpected turn. I don't know what compelled me, what cracked the carefully constructed facade of my composure, but the words just tumbled out, not the full, horrifying truth, but enough for him to grasp the constant, gnawing fear that was my shadow. I told him I wasn't just running from a bad breakup or a mistake. I was running from people who wouldn't stop, people who were dangerous, relentless. He didn't flinch, he didn't judge, he simply listened, his gaze unwavering, filled with a deep, quiet concern I hadn't seen in years, perhaps never truly felt directed at me. His silence was not empty, it was filled with understanding. Then he offered me a solution so audacious, so unbelievable, it stole the air from my lungs. We were in his beautiful, slightly dated home, Stonehurst, nestled among tall pines on the outskirts of town. It was filled with books and antique furniture, a testament to a life lived richly, but also quietly. He sat across from me in his worn leather armchair, his hands clasped, his voice calm and steady, like a gentle stream. "Chloe," he began, his voice soft but firm, "I have no immediate family left here. My beloved wife, Eleanor, passed many years ago, and her absence still echoes in these rooms. My children are grown, settled in distant states, living their own lives, rarely visiting. My estate is significant, yes, a comfortable legacy, but it's also a quiet, private world, rarely disturbed. What if we were to forge a new foundation, as I spoke of earlier? A new life, not just for you, but perhaps for me as well." My mind raced, trying to keep up, piecing together the impossible puzzle he was presenting. "Marry me, Chloe," he stated, his eyes kind but resolute, meeting my shocked gaze directly. "A marriage, even one of convenience, offers legal protection, a new identity, a layer of anonymity that could be crucial for you. My home is secluded, my life quiet. With my resources, we could ensure you disappear completely from their radar, become invisible." He paused, a gentle, sad smile touching his lips. "And in return," he continued, his voice softer, "I would have companionship in my later years. Someone to share my books with, my quiet evenings. Someone to bring life back into these old walls, which have grown to silent. It would be a partnership, Chloe, a mutual benefit. A true refuge for us both." My mind reeled, marrying a man twice my age. The whispers, the judgment, the immediate assumption of gold digging would be unavoidable. It would be a public declaration that would undoubtedly invite scorn, dissecting gazes, and cruel remarks. But then I thought of the alternative, a life forever on the run, constant fear my only companion, never truly safe, always one step ahead of the people who wanted me gone. I thought of the exhaustion, the gnawing loneliness that ate at me daily. Elijah wasn't asking for romantic love, not in the traditional, passionate sense, at least not at first. He was offering a lifeline, a fortress, a chance at life itself, a chance to finally stop running. The choice, despite its shocking nature, was clear. It wasn't a choice of heart, but of survival. We married quietly just a few weeks later, with only Elijah's elderly, discreet lawyer, Mr. Henderson, and his kind, silent housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, as witnesses. The ceremony was brief, held in his sun-drenched study, surrounded by towering bookshelves. The looks I received from the handful of his acquaintances who heard about it stem, of course. Casual conversations would cease when I entered a room. I overheard hushed whispers, "Poor old Elijah, taken for a ride by a pretty young thing." She's clearly after his money. What else could it be? Look at the age difference. But their words were a small, bearable price to pay for the growing sense of safety that began to envelop me, a warmth I hadn't felt in years. The house, his presence, became my sanctuary. Life with Elijah was nothing like the mercenary exchange the world assumed. There were no demands, no expectations beyond shared meals, quiet conversations, and the occasional stroll in his sprawling, beautiful garden. He introduced me to new worlds through his vast library, patiently guiding me through history, philosophy, and art. He encouraged me to read, to learn, to grow, patiently answering my questions about everything from the fall of empires to the nuances of poetry. He treated me with an unwavering respect, a gentle kindness I had never known in my volatile youth. He protected me fiercely, subtly. He hired a discreet security firm to monitor the property, without ever making me feel like a prisoner, ensuring that my new existence was truly impenetrable. He ensured my name was legally changed, my paper trail meticulously erased, effectively making me a phantom in the eyes of my pursuers. Slowly, painstakingly, the constant, gnawing fear began to recede. I started to sleep through the night, deep, dreamless sleep that replenished my soul and mended the frayed edges of my nerves. The constant, tight knot in my stomach loosened its grip. I began to trust the quiet, steady rhythm of our life, the comforting predictability of his presence, and then something utterly unexpected began to bloom between us. Not a passionate, fiery love, but something deeper, more profound, a quiet, abiding affection. It was a love built on respect, on shared vulnerabilities, on the quiet understanding that only two souls who have known deep loneliness and quiet resilience can truly share. He told me stories of his long life, of his beloved Eleanor, of his children scattered across the country, his triumphs and his regrets, his quiet heartbreaks. I, in turn, shared more of my past, the fragments I could bear to speak of, the fear, the flight, the relentless struggle, and he listened, his eyes filled with empathy, never once pressing for details I wasn't ready to give. We found solace in each other's presence, a quiet joy in shared moments, a cup of tea on the porch as the sun set, a shared laugh over a particularly witty passage in a book, the simple comfort of his hand resting gently on mine during a quiet evening, a silent acknowledgement of our bond. He became my anchor, my confidant, my truest friend. And I hope, brought a spark back into his twilight years, a renewed sense of purpose, a gentle warmth to his quiet existence. The danger from my past never completely vanished, but it faded into a distant hum, a faint, almost imperceptible echo. Elijah's network, his careful planning, had indeed made me disappear. I was no longer Chloe Davis, the terrified girl on the run. I was Chloe Stone, the quiet, respected wife of a beloved professor, a woman who finally felt safe, secure, and seen. And though the world might still see a young woman who married for money, they would never see the truth. They would never see the whispered fears that had once haunted my every step, the quiet courage it took to make such an unconventional choice, the unexpected tenderness that blossomed in the most improbable of unions. They would never know that marrying Elijah wasn't about his wealth, but about the profound, irreplaceable wealth of safety, peace, and the kind of love that truly saves a life from the abyss. Elijah passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years ago, surrounded by the books he loved and the quiet comfort of our shared home. The grief was immense, a quiet, aching void in the space he used to occupy, a profound sense of loss for the man who had given me everything. But it was also filled with an immense, overflowing gratitude. He left me not just with security, not just with comfort, but with a legacy of quiet strength, of knowledge, of profound peace, and of a love that defied all expectations and societal norms. I'm no longer afraid. I'm no longer running. I am finally truly free, and that freedom, that profound, enduring peace, was a gift he gave me far more precious than any fortune. It was the bravest thing I've ever done, and I would do it all again without a moment's hesitation, for him, for us.